Module 6. The United Nations System, Vertical Funds, NGOs, and Foundations. The grant and delivery side of the sector, how the UN is funded, how it contracts, and the accredited entity model that governs every climate and global health fund. The UN divided development work by domain and gave each domain an agency with its own mandate, governing board, funding, and procurement rules. There is no single UN procurement system. UNDP is the general-purpose development arm headquartered in New York, UNICEF for children. WFP for food assistance in Rome, the largest humanitarian operation in the world. WHO for health in Geneva. FAO for food and agriculture, and IFAD for rural poverty both in Rome. IFAD being unusual in that it is both a UN specialized agency and an international financial institution that lends concessionally. UNHCR for refugees and IOM for migration both in Geneva. UNEP and UN Habitat in Nairobi. UNIDO in Vienna. UNFPA, UN Women. The ILO, UNESCO, UNODC, UNCDF and OCH, a UNOPS, headquartered in Copenhagen, is different in kind. It is the system's implementation and procurement arm, delivering project management, procurement and infrastructure services on behalf of other UN entities, governments, and donors. A large share of UN-badged consulting and works contracts is actually issued by UNOPS. Since the 2019 reform, the resident coordinator in each country heads the UN country team and reports to the Secretary General rather than through UNDP. Programming is framed by the cooperation framework agreed with the host government. Two kinds of money, and the difference decides how secure your contract is. Assessed contributions are compulsory dues, and they fund a minority of development work. Voluntary contributions fund most of it, and they split in two. Core resources may be allocated by the agency according to its own priorities. Earmarked or non-core resources are tied by the donor to a specific program, country, or theme. The balance has shifted heavily towards earmarked funding. The consequence is direct. Most UN consulting contracts sit on top of a specific donor-funded project, and when that funding ends or is cut, the contract ends with it regardless of performance. Ask which funding line pays for an assignment before you plan around it. 3 routes in, and for a firm they are not equally valuable. First, competitive procurement, requests for proposals, invitations to bid, or requests for quotation, run by the agency itself or by UNOPS on its behalf. Second, long-term agreements, a pre-qualified pool from which assignments are commissioned without a fresh full competition. This is the highest value target in the UN system because a place on an LTA converts into repeat work at low bid cost. Third, agency rosters of vetted experts. And fourth, individual contracts where an agency engages a single expert directly. These sit outside firm-level procurement but account for a large share of UN consultant hiring. Registration on the United Nations Global Marketplace, UNGM, is the common entry point for firms, though individual assignments are frequently advertised only on each agency's own portal. Registration alone generates nothing. Monitoring notices does. Vertical funds are financing vehicles organized around one global problem rather than around a country or a region. They hold money and set standards. They almost never implement. On climate and environment, the Green Climate Fund, established under the UN Climate Convention and headquartered in Songdo, Republic of Korea. The Global Environment Facility, established in 1991 in Washington, which serves several environmental conventions and administers the Least Developed Countries Fund and the Special Climate Change Fund. The Adaptation Fund, created under the Kyoto Protocol, which pioneered direct national access. The Climate Investment Funds, housed at the World Bank and delivered through the development banks. And the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, agreed at the 2022 and 2023 climate conferences and hosted by the World Bank. On health and education, the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria, established 2002 in Geneva, which works through country coordinating mechanisms and principal recipients. Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, also in Geneva. UNITAID and CEPI, the Global Partnership for Education and Education, cannot wait. And the Pandemic Fund, established in 2022 and hosted by the World Bank. This is the mechanism to understand, because every large climate fund uses a version of it, and consultants who do not understand it aim at the wrong target. The fund does not contract with a project sponsor directly. It channels money through accredited entities, organizations it has vetted for fiduciary standards, environmental and social safeguards, and gender policy. Accredited entities are either international, typically a development bank or a UN agency, or direct access, meaning a national or regional institution in the recipient country. In the green climate fund, a national designated authority in each country endorses proposals. The global fund uses country coordinating mechanisms. The accredited entity then designs and supervises the project and contracts the delivery. So the consulting demand clusters at the links in that chain, not at the fund itself, helping a national institution assemble an accreditation application. Preparing concept notes and full funding proposals, long, technically demanding documents requiring a climate rationale, financial structuring, and full environmental, social, and gender assessment. Readiness and capacity support. Then feasibility, design, safeguards, monitoring, and evaluation once a project is approved. Approval timelines from concept to funding decision are measured in years. Two more groups of players. Large NGOs are implementers in their own right and hold substantial funded portfolios. BRAC, which began in Bangladesh and is among the largest development organizations in the world, alongside Save the Children, CARE, Mercy Corps, Oxfam, the International Rescue Committee, the Norwegian Refugee Council, Plan International, World Vision, and SNV. They contract consultants heavily for evaluation, technical design, and assessment work. Private foundations shape the sector out of proportion to their volume because they set agendas. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Health and Agriculture, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the MasterCard Foundation with its Africa focus, the Aga Khan Development Network, Wellcome, Open Society Foundations, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. Before you rely on any of this, check the source. UN agency structures, funding levels, contract modalities, and procurement portals change, and agencies have been under budget pressure. Check each agency's own procurement page and UNGM for the funds, check the fund's own accreditation list, proposal template and current funding cycle. Accreditation lists and templates are revised regularly. In summary, the UN is a federation of mandate-holding agencies, funded increasingly by earmarked contributions, contracting through competitive procurement, long-term agreements, rosters, and individual contracts, with UNOPS as the system's implementation arm. Vertical funds hold thematic money and move it only through accredited entities, which is where the consulting work sits. Large NGOs implement at scale, and foundations set agendas. Next, the instruments: loans, grants, technical assistance, and guarantees.